The envelope slid under the door at 11:47 p.m. Muhammad Ali was sitting on the edge of the bed in his Miami hotel room, hands folded, staring at nothing in particular. The air conditioning hummed. Outside, traffic moved along Collins Avenue. Headlights swept across the ceiling in slow arcs. The room was dark except for the light bleeding in from the hallway and the faint glow of the city through the curtains. He'd been sitting like that for maybe 20 minutes, not thinking about the fight, not thinking about Liston, just sitting, breathing, trying to find the quiet place inside himself that he needed before a big fight. The place where fear couldn't reach him, where doubt couldn't touch him. That's when he saw it. A thin white rectangle sliding across the carpet. Slow. Deliberate. Someone had pushed it under the door from the hallway. It stopped about 6 inches inside the room. Ali didn't move. He looked at the envelope, then at the door, then back at the envelope. Nobody knocked. Nobody called out. Nobody tried the handle. Just the envelope. White. Blank. No writing on the outside. Ali stood up slowly, walked over, bent down, picked it up. It was light. Almost nothing inside. He held it up to the light from the hallway. Could see the outline of something flat, rectangular. Probably a photograph. He looked at the door again. Listened. The hallway was silent. Whoever put it there was already gone. Ali walked back to the bed and sat down. Held the envelope in both hands, turned it over. Still nothing written on it. No name, no address, no stamp. Hand delivered. He opened it. Inside was a single photograph, black and white, 4 by 6 inches. Good quality, sharp focus. It showed a little girl walking on a sidewalk. She was wearing a white dress and carrying a small backpack. Her hair was in 2 ponytails tied with ribbons. She was looking down at the ground as she walked, the way children do when they're thinking about something. The little girl was Ali's daughter, 3 years old, taken that morning outside her preschool in Chicago. Ali stared at the photograph. His hands didn't shake. His breathing didn't change. But something inside him went very cold and very still. He recognized the angle. The photo had been taken from across the street, maybe 30 feet away, close enough to see her face clearly, close enough to see the pattern on her dress, close enough to count the buttons. There was no note, no message, no instructions, no demands, just the photograph. Ali set it down on the bed beside him, looked at it lying there on the white sheets. His daughter, walking to school, unaware that someone was watching her, unaware that someone was close enough to take her picture, unaware that someone wanted her father to know they could reach her whenever they wanted to. The message was clear without words. Someone knew where his family lived. Someone knew where his daughter went to school. Someone had been there that morning. Someone wanted him to understand that they could get close to her any time they chose. And someone wanted him to be afraid. Ali sat on the edge of the bed for 2 hours. Didn't move. Didn't call anyone. Didn't turn on the light. Just sat there in the dark, holding that photograph, thinking. The fight with Sonny Liston was 36 hours away. The rematch. The one everyone had been waiting for. The one that would prove whether Ali's first victory had been a fluke or whether he was the real thing. The one that would determine whether he was just a loud-mouthed kid or the future of heavyweight boxing. Someone wanted to make sure that fight went a certain way. Someone wanted Ali to understand what would happen if it didn't. Ali had been threatened before, plenty of times. Death threats came with the territory when you were young and black and Muslim and loud and willing to say things that made white America uncomfortable. He'd received letters, phone calls, people shouting at him on the street, people telling him they'd kill him, people telling him he should go back to Africa, people telling him he was a disgrace. He'd learned to ignore most of it, learned to smile and keep moving, learned that most people who threatened you were cowards who'd never do anything. But this was different. This wasn't some angry letter from a stranger. This wasn't some drunk shouting threats outside a restaurant. This was someone who knew where his daughter lived, someone who knew where she went to school, someone who had the resources and the will to get close to her, someone who wanted him to know they could hurt the people he loved. And they'd done it without saying a single word. Ali looked at the photograph again, his daughter's face, innocent, unaware, safe in that moment. But the photograph itself was proof that safety was an illusion, that someone had violated that safety, that someone could do it again. He thought about calling his wife, telling her what happened, telling her to pull their daughter out of school, telling her to leave Chicago, go somewhere safe, somewhere these people couldn't find them. But where was that? If they knew where his daughter went to school in Chicago, they could find her anywhere. If they could get close enough to take a photograph, they could get close enough to do worse. Ali set the photograph down, stood up, walked to the window, looked out at Miami Beach, the lights, the ocean, the city that didn't sleep. He knew who sent the photograph, didn't know names, didn't know faces, but he knew the type. Men with money, men with connections, men who'd bet heavily on this fight, men who wanted to make sure their bet paid off, men who thought they could control the outcome by controlling the fighters. It wasn't the first time organized crime had tried to fix a boxing match. It wouldn't be the last, but it was the first time they'd come after Ali's family to do it. That's what made this different. They hadn't threatened him. They'd threatened his child. They thought that would make him afraid, thought it would make him compliant, thought he'd do whatever they wanted to keep his daughter safe. They were wrong about that. Ali walked back to the bed, picked up the photograph, looked at it one more time. His daughter, walking to school, unaware of the danger around her, trusting that the world was safe. He folded the photograph once, twice, put it in his pocket. Then he picked up the phone and made a call. The man who answered was someone Ali had known for years, someone he trusted, someone who understood how these things worked, someone who knew people who could send messages back to the kind of men who sent photographs under hotel room doors. Ali didn't explain much, just said he needed a meeting, said it was urgent, said it had to happen before the fight. The man on the other end of the phone asked one question. "Are you in trouble?" Ali thought about that, thought about his daughter, thought about the photograph, thought about the men who sent it. "No," Ali said, "but someone else is about to be." The meeting was arranged for the next morning, 8 a.m., a diner on the edge of Miami, the kind of place where nobody asked questions and nobody remembered faces. Ali arrived early, sat in a booth in the back, ordered coffee, didn't drink it, just sat there, waiting, watching the door. At 8:15, 3 men walked in. They looked like businessmen. Expensive suits, nice shoes, clean shaves. But Ali knew what they were, knew what they did, knew that underneath the expensive suits were men who made their living through violence and fear. The 3 men sat down across from Ali, didn't order anything, didn't introduce themselves, just waited. Ali took the photograph out of his pocket, unfolded it, set it on the table between them. The men looked at it, didn't react, didn't confirm, didn't deny, just looked. "Someone sent this to me last night," Ali said. His voice was calm, quiet, no anger, no fear, just stating facts. "Someone wanted me to know they could get close to my daughter. Someone wanted me to understand that they could hurt her if I didn't do what they wanted." One of the men leaned back in the booth, crossed his arms. "That's unfortunate." "Yes," Ali said. "It is." The man waited. Everyone at the table knew this wasn't a conversation. This was a negotiation. Ali leaned forward, hands flat on the table. "I need you to give a message to whoever sent this." "We don't know who sent it," the man said. "Yes, you do," Ali said, "and they need to hear this message very clearly. So I'm going to say it once, and you're going to make sure they understand." The three men didn't move, didn't speak, just watched Ali with the kind of attention you give to someone who might be dangerous. "If anything happens to my daughter," Ali said, "if anything happens to my wife, if anything happens to anyone in my family, I will make it my life's work to find out who was responsible. And when I find out, I won't go to the police. I won't hire lawyers. I won't file lawsuits. I will tell every reporter, every journalist, every newspaper, every television station in America exactly what happened. I will tell them who sent this photograph. I will tell them about this meeting. I will tell them everything. And I will not stop talking about it until everyone knows." One of the men smiled slightly. "That's a bold threat." "It's not a threat," Ali said. "It's a promise. And here's why it matters to you. Right now, the men who sent this photograph are invisible. Nobody knows their names. Nobody knows what they do. They operate in the shadows. That's how they like it. But if I start talking, if I tell the world what they did, they won't be invisible anymore. Every law enforcement agency in the country will be looking at them. Every politician will have to pretend to care. Every reporter will want the story. The heat will be unbearable, and that heat will fall on everyone connected to them, including you." The three men were quiet. Ali continued, "I'm fighting Sonny Liston in 36 hours. I'm going to win that fight. Not because anyone told me to, not because anyone paid me to, but because I'm better than he is. And after I win, I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep winning. I'm going to become the most famous athlete in the world. And if anyone touches my family, I will use every bit of that fame to destroy whoever was responsible. I will make it so loud and so public that they'll have no choice but to disappear. Or go to prison. Or worse." The man who'd been smiling wasn't smiling anymore. "You think your fame protects you?" he asked. "No," Ali said. "I think my fame makes me dangerous to people who need to stay hidden. You can threaten me all you want. You can try to hurt me. But the moment you touch my family, you make an enemy who has a microphone and a platform and millions of people watching. And that enemy won't stop until everyone knows what you did." Ali picked up the photograph, folded it, put it back in his pocket. "Tell your employers that Muhammad Ali doesn't scare easy. Tell them I'm going to fight my way. Tell them they made a mistake sending this. And tell them that if they ever come near my family again, I'll make sure that mistake costs them everything." He stood up, put $5 on the table for the coffee he didn't drink. "You gentlemen have a good day," Ali said. Then he walked out of the diner. The three men sat there for a moment. Then one of them picked up the $5, looked at it, set it back down. "He's serious," the man said. "Yeah," another one replied. "I know. What do we tell them?" The first man thought about it. Thought about Muhammad Ali. Thought about what he'd just heard. Thought about how much trouble it would cause if Ali actually did what he said he'd do. "We tell them to back off," the man said. "We tell them the risk isn't worth it. And we tell them to never touch his family again. They're not going to like that." "I don't care what they like," the man said. "That kid just made a very good point. He's about to be the most famous fighter in the world. And if he starts talking about who threatened his family, every Fed in the country will be looking at us. The last thing we need is that kind of attention." The three men left the diner, made some calls, delivered the message. By that afternoon, word had spread through the right channels. The photograph had been a mistake. Muhammad Ali's family was off limits. Anyone who went near them would answer for it. The men who sent the photograph never tried anything like it again. 36 hours later, Muhammad Ali knocked out Sonny Liston in the first round. One punch. Liston went down. Didn't get up. The crowd went wild. Ali stood over him and shouted, "Get up and fight, sucker!" But Liston didn't get up, and Ali became the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. After the fight, a reporter asked Ali if he'd been nervous before the match. "Nervous?" Ali said, smiling that famous smile. "Man, I wasn't nervous at all. I knew I was going to win. I always know." The reporter laughed, asked a few more questions, moved on. But that night, back in his hotel room, Ali took the photograph out of his pocket, looked at it one more time. His daughter, walking to school, safe. He tore the photograph into pieces, threw the pieces in the trash. Then he called his wife, told her he loved her, told her to kiss their daughter goodnight for him, told her he'd be home soon. He didn't tell her about the envelope, didn't tell her about the photograph, didn't tell her about the meeting at the diner. Some burdens you carry alone, some things you don't share because sharing them would only create fear. But Ali made himself a promise that night. He would never let anyone use his family against him again. He would never let fear control his choices. And he would never back down from anyone who thought they could threaten the people he loved. That promise stayed with him for the rest of his life. Years later, long after he'd retired, long after he'd become a global icon, someone asked him what his greatest victory was. Most people expected him to say, "The Thriller in Manila," or "The Rumble in the Jungle," or "The first Liston fight." But Ali thought for a moment. Then he said something that surprised everyone. "My greatest victory was a fight nobody ever saw. A fight I won without throwing a single punch. A fight where I protected the people I loved by making sure the people who wanted to hurt them understood that hurting them would cost more than they were willing to pay." The interviewer asked what fight he was talking about. Ali smiled. "That's a story for another time." But the people who were there that morning in Miami, the people who sat across from Ali in that diner, the people who delivered his message, they knew. They knew that Muhammad Ali wasn't just a fighter. He was a man who understood power, real power, not the power of violence or money or connections, but the power of being willing to sacrifice everything to protect what mattered. And that's a power nobody can threaten, nobody can buy, nobody can control. That morning, someone tried to make Muhammad Ali afraid. Instead, they learned what it meant to be afraid of him, not because of what he could do in a boxing ring, but because of what he was willing to do outside of it. The envelope under the door at 11:47 p.m. was meant to be a threat. Instead, it became a promise that Muhammad Ali kept for the rest of his life. that the people he loved were off-limits, that anyone who threatened them would pay a price they couldn't afford, and that no amount of money or power or influence would ever change that. Sometimes the most important fights aren't the ones everyone sees. Sometimes they're the quiet ones, the ones that happen in diners and hotel rooms and late-night phone calls, the ones where the stakes aren't titles or belts or fame, the ones where the stakes are the people you love. And Muhammad Ali won that fight, not with his fists, but with his voice, his fame, his willingness to make noise when everyone else wanted silence. The photograph was meant to control him. Instead, it freed him. Because once he made his promise clear, once he made it known what would happen if anyone touched his family, he never had to worry about it again. The men who operated in shadows learned that threatening Muhammad Ali's family meant being dragged into the light, and that was something they couldn't survive. So they backed off, stayed away, left him and his family alone. And Ali went on to become the greatest boxer of all time. But before he became the greatest, before all the championships and the fame and the glory, he was just a father sitting in a hotel room at midnight, holding a photograph of his daughter and deciding what kind of man he was going to be. He chose to be the kind of man who protected his family no matter what. He chose to be the kind of man who couldn't be threatened. He chose to be the kind of man who turned fear into power. And that choice, made in the darkness of a Miami hotel room in 1965, defined everything that came after. The envelope slid under the door at 11:47 p.m. By 8:30 the next morning, the people who sent it realized they'd made a mistake they could never take back. They'd tried to threaten Muhammad Ali's family. Instead, they'd shown him exactly how much power he had, and he used that power to make sure they never tried anything like it again. That's what made him the greatest. Not the fights he won in the ring, but the fights he won outside of it. The fights nobody saw. The fights that mattered most.